What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to talk about Dispatch yet again, and want to talk about the episodic nature of it. Obviously, I think this is good timing with episodes 3 and 4, of course, dropping within the next, 12 or so hours, probably, by the time you guys see it. And I'm very, very excited. I'll have a review out probably tomorrow night around this time tomorrow. Super, super pumped. I'm just hoping, it can stay to the very high level of the first 2 episodes. And, that kind of gets into the conversation, right? Does it need to be episodic? Does it need to be broken up? I think, to be honest with you, I feel like these are the kinds of things that you hear people say no matter what, but just every time, right? You go back, you don't even have to go back all that long, when it was like The Expanse, right? Or when Life is Strange Double Exposure did it in a very interesting way with it broken up between chapters 1 and 2 and the rest of them coming a few weeks later, right? There was kind of like that paid early access that you could do, pay a little bit extra, get to play it a little bit early. But generally, I would say the last maybe 3-4 years, any game that has attempted to do the episodic thing has been hit with backlash of, well, those things are dead. You can't do those anymore. And I just wanted to push back, gently. Look, I can respect your opinion if you can respect mine. I do think it's a bias depending on what era you grew up in the gaming, sphere. Like for me, getting into it and being in love so much with the classic Telltale, and I will say, not even the original Telltale. Like I played Back to the Future, but I played that late. I might have played Jurassic Park. I definitely remember like it releasing. So I wasn't around, I wasn't present and super like rooting for it, back then. But really, all starts with The Walking Dead, right? And subsequently, all of these other Telltale properties. Don't Nod, of course, doing Life is Strange. I mean, I really loved it. And I also think there's a bit of a biasness because I grew up loving these episodic things and loving them when they were also kind of broken. So let me be a little bit critical to episodic gaming, but also say why I think Dispatch is about as good as it gets. And this is why I don't really side with, or even, maybe I can understand it to a degree, but I don't fully understand the backlash it's getting from some people in terms of being episodic. It used to be like anything goes. You could have an episode come out. You could have episode 2 come out 6 months from now. You could have episode 3 come out a month after that. You could have episode 4 come out 2 months after that. At the time, I think Life is Strange actually did it best. There was, I forget exactly, but I think it was around 2 months between episodes. And I think one of the episodes came out a few weeks earlier than that. So they were kind of on a consistent schedule. One episode I definitely remember coming out maybe a month after. Maybe it was episode 4. But that was, to me, kind of like, oh, well, this is how you do it. And it wasn't even perfect, to be honest. Like, it could have even been better than that. But you had, like, Telltale out there doing probably the best episodic games, but doing the releases about as bad as you possibly could. Tales from the Borderlands was an absolute mess. The Walking Dead eventually got into an absolute mess. Minecraft, Batman. I'm just go through the line. Wolf Among Us was probably the worst. Wasn't episode 2 delayed? So wasn't it like 4 or 5 months in between episodes 1 and 2 of Wolf Among Us? It was a disaster. So, and I think that's just, kind of my perspective looking at it, where these games used to be so pathetic in terms of, their quality was outrageously good, okay? I love pretty much all the ones I just listed. Like, there's some really, really great ones, but in terms of them releasing them and getting them out consistently, it was a complete, I don't want to say garbage effort. It was total trash in terms of the results, but at the time, what it really, I think, is they were working on it. And so to fast forward, okay, so why is that important, I guess, right now to Dispatch? I am totally fine with it happening nowadays, and I'll explain some of the reasons why. But to add on, in terms of this actual release schedule, they have a definitive and like perfect release schedule, in my opinion. You got 2 episodes a week, and you could have debated like, well, why 2, right? Because there's 8 episodes in all. Why combine 2 of them? Well, we're kind of finding that out, right? 45 minutes an episode, so ultimately you're getting about an hour and a half to 2 hours. To be honest with you, I don't even know if you can stretch it to 2 hours unless you replay it. You're really getting like an hour 15 to an hour and a half each week. Okay, now, again, if you remember back then, a lot of these episodes, like Life is Strange could stretch, I remember, because just all the stuff you could do. But, you kind of think classic, Wolf Among Us, Tales, Walking Dead, a lot of them could range between an hour and a half, maybe 2.5, like if they were a super long one. So you're getting a little bit shorter, but not like outrageously, different than what you were getting in terms of length. And it's just consistent. I mean, that's the main thing. That's why those stories I feel like are important. Like, I'm coming at it from a perspective of, I like episodic games. I like the kind of like fireside chats or water cooler talks. So you'll hear people say that. I'm a fan of that, and I want to talk about that in a second. But also, like, if it's consistent, I will say, like, nowadays, I kind of need it to be like that. Like, I fully would embrace Wolf Among Us 2 if it ever happens, God willing, right? I want that. Now, at the time, a couple of years ago, they said it was going to be episodic. I think they said that to Jeff Keighley in a little roundtable thing, but it's been years. A lot has happened. Maybe it's not going to be episodic, right? Life is Strange has kind of abandoned that. True Colors came out all at once, but it was divided into chapters within the game. Life is Strange Double Exposure, kind of the same thing. They split it up, but only because of the early access, like, paid thing. Generally, that's the same thing. You buy it, and it's just one package deal. So Life is Strange has really abandoned it. But, like, The Expanse is a good example. Now, I will say, I don't think it worked for The Expanse, and that kind of moves into another thing. There needs to be reason. Like anticipation for each episode. And again, maybe there's a little bit of biasness or like subjectivity, to that. So far, I think Dispatch has that because it's so good. Really, I think what is required of these games is be extremely good and have a consistent release schedule. I think those are the two factors in why I'm totally cool with it being episodic and why I think it'll actually end up working. See, if it's not impactful enough, if you don't really care, and that's, to me, just to me, The Expanse was kind of like that. I don't think it was bad. I never actually finished it, though. I played 3 of the episodes. There might have been 5. There might have actually been more. I kind of forget, but I played the first 3, and I do think that was like a consistent schedule too. I don't know if that was weekly though, but it just, to me, it was not as good. I wasn't as connected to it, so I didn't really care when the next episodes dropped. I mean, look, what you're really replicating, this is not rocket science, you're replicating like television, right? Like, you want the episodic thing. Every week there's a new thing, and like nowadays there's Netflix, right? You drop all episodes all at one time. Some of these series have been kind of stopping that, right? There was a big era where all of these series would start doing it. Instead of episodic or weekly releases, they would all just release at one time. Now you're kind of seeing, well, like, it's part 1, part 2, right? Like, half of it will release 4 episodes. And I think there is this mentality of like getting it all at once. Now, for games, I think it is different because historically we've always gotten games all at once, right? To do episodic in games is kind of changing it a little bit, but it can work for games like Dispatch, the Telltale type stuff, all that. It works for those. But that's just me personally, and like I said, the kind of water cooler type discussions. Look, I don't think we're there yet. So, like, granted, some of the stuff I'm saying is kind of what I hope will eventually happen. What I think right now is happening with Dispatch is word of mouth is working. And we'll see. I guess like sales is probably how you validate that, right? But like, you saw these first 2 episodes, you saw the streamers, you saw like Jacksepticeye and Moist Critical, right? People that are in the game. And you're able to break it up and kind of build a crowd over the weeks. And I do think it works. And I think historically it worked with like the Life is Stranges and Walking Deads of the world. Now, those games had months in between. So you kind of had a bigger period to kind of build up. But at the same time, that can be a pro. It can also be a con because it could have been too long. And I think at points with the, like say mid to early 2010s, it was too long. There were a lot of times it was too long of a gap. But like now it's 1 week. You don't have to wait all that long. You got like 6 days. People get to play it. You got the streamers' reactions. You got reviews. And I don't think we're there to the point of like theory crafting. I think, and I've said this before, like Life is Strange, that's such a huge reason why Life is Strange was so big to me, is that every day of those 2 months in between episodes, oh my dear God, the community, it was smaller back then even, right? But I was around and I saw it. It was incredible, and the amount of theories and the amount of passion, and I really felt in real time Life is Strange building up steam from episodes 1 to episode 5. 5 back in 2015. Okay. So like for right now, I don't, the theory stuff, I do actually have some theories of where Dispatch is going, but we're only 2 in, right? And we still got 3 more weeks to go. So I think that last part will come later. I think maybe this week, maybe next week, that's when you'll start having people not just saying how good it is and kind of having that word of mouth kind of build up, but then there'll also be this anticipation. I mean, there is already anticipation, I would say, for the next week, but more crafting of like, well, what could they do in the next episodes? And I think that's powerful. I really do, because this is also a game that is just going to build over time, or at least you want it to build over time. So I'm a fan. I will take episodic games. Like I said, you need to just have it be highly engaging and highly good. It just needs to be a good game. It needs to make you say, man, I can't wait for that next episode. And then it needs to be consistent. You can't say that first part, oh man, I can't wait for the next episode, and you don't know when that episode is. And that was a big problem I think Telltale ran into with Minecraft and some of those kind of like second tier and second wave games they did. Game of Thrones, even Batman, it was like, oh, well, maybe the episode was good. I'm excited for episode 3. Oh, like, well, God only knows when episode 3 even drops, because it was not consistent. And now it is. I mean, if it was not consistent, I think I'd have a different take on it, but we're getting it weekly. And it's the same thing, by the way, for Wolf Among Us. Like, it's gotta be consistent. And again, like, the big difference there is the game's done. Like with Dispatch and hopefully Wolf Among Us, when that eventually happens, the game needs to be done at episode 1. The thing with those games back then, the game wasn't done. When Life is Strange or when The Walking Dead or Wolf Among Us, right, that comes out across an entire like 13, 14 months, I think the Wolf Among Us maybe came out across, the 5th episode was not done when they released episode 1. They were making episode 2, and I remember them talking about that, where they're like, yeah, we're still taking into consideration what people were saying for this last episode for the next one. It's like, you're not done with that yet, and that's why it took freaking forever, and they didn't even know when the next episode would drop. They didn't have the full game ready. Nowadays, you have the full game ready, and you split it up kind of naturally. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure, as always, you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on, and hope to see you all on the next one.